I am joined right now by the Pro Football Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, Mike Haynes. Mike, thanks for being with us. It's the Mike and Mike show today.
Thanks for having me. Oh, I like that.
I like it, too. Listen, let's talk about a little bit of everything. We obviously, as a former Super Bowl champion who picked off Joe Theismann in Super Bowl 18 in that big blowout victory with the Raiders, I want to get your take on everything that happened in the Super Bowl. But let's start with this. You had a quote where you said about playing defense. You said, "You're always either bad or great. There are no in-betweens. I wish the public was more educated about defense, but they're not. I had some of my best games when I'm competing and shutting out a guy and it goes unnoticed." So in the Super Bowl, I think defense was a big story that kind of has gone unnoticed, I think. We saw what Steve Spagnuolo has done with the Chiefs defense. When you're evaluating the Super Bowl and how they held Patrick Mahomes, even the 49ers held them to 3 points, in the first half. Tell me from a defensive perspective what you saw from the Super Bowl.
Well, actually, I was expecting a lot of scoring.
Yes.
But obviously both teams have great defenses. Otherwise, we would have seen a lot of scoring. And the coaches had a tremendous amount of respect for each other. And they weren't going to try to trick them and fool them and all the other stuff. They just wanted to play sound football.
Yeah.
And the defense, both defenses really played really well. Mahomes, he's a character. Now, most guys who are quarterback, they throw the ball the same way. He could throw it sidearm, overhand, backhand, underhand. He could throw a million ways.
Yeah.
I don't know if he always played that way or if he learned to play that way and it helped him become a better quarterback. But he was a very interesting guy, and I'm sure defensive coordinators have a hard time trying to figure him out because most guys who are running to their left, they can't run to their left and throw back to their right.
Right.
He can.
It's crazy what he can do.
Yeah.
He's like a magician in the pocket, out of the pocket. But, when it comes to defensive back play, you are the stud of all studs. I mean, all time, you had 46 interceptions, 14 seasons, 4 All-Pro selections, 9 Pro Bowls. You were the 5th pick in the draft. You came from Arizona State. Immediately, you're the Defensive Rookie of the Year. You play all these seasons with the Patriots. Then you come to the Raiders, and now you have this tandem with Lester Hayes back there. And it's kind of like what we saw with McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed having an amazing tandem with 2 corners. But as you're watching the game nowadays and you see a player like Mahomes, what would you do if you were on the field as a cornerback? What could you do to stop this guy? Because I think 30 other franchises are watching the Super Bowl and they're thinking, how are we going to take down Mahomes?
Well, what I would do first thing is I'd call Lester Hayes. Lester Hayes, that guy, he'd been playing football, tackle football ever since he was a little kid.
Yeah.
And when I came to the Raiders and I saw how much he studied, I tried to study with him all the time. And so different things that he would notice, I didn't notice. And he said, yeah, you notice every time that back does this, this happens. I'm going, you're right, Lester. And so it really helped me. Now, I'd already played, 4 years of college, 7 years of pros before I came there, and I was still learning because I was lucky to have guys like him on my team. And the two of us together was a lot of fun. If you look at a lot of film of Lester, you'll see a lot of times where he would leave his man and go to where he knows the quarterback is going to throw the ball. This is the same down and distance. The plays are starting up the same way. The running back runs out this way. The line is blocking a certain way. He might leave his man and run over there to the tight end because he knows he's got to throw it to the tight end. That's how much of a student he was, much more of a student than me.
But everybody talks about not just your character on the field, but the character you had off the field. Dan Fouts said you're one of the best, gunner from San Diego Chargers. Los Angeles Chargers. He said you were a great man-to-man cover, one of the best defensive backs he ever faced. He said in the fourth quarter, when everybody's getting slow and tired, that's when you're picking it up. So you got to beat Mike Haynes in the first quarter, but your demeanor is so fascinating to me. We're seeing so many cornerbacks in the league now that are so brash and braggadocious, right? It's a whole personality thing. Almost a lot of corners are becoming like wide receivers used to be. We see Sauce Gardner. We see, like guys like Jalen Ramsey. It's a whole different mentality. Do you think your disposition, the way that you kind of come across, is that really helpful to have success on the field as a cornerback, as the way that you have to approach the game?
Well, I think a little bit has to do with the way my mom raised me.
Barbara and Hudson, right?
Yeah, that was my dad, And but my mom is the one, and she, I became a born-again Christian, and so I grew up in LA, so I had a little bit of that in me, what you're talking about,
You did.
that cockiness kind of stuff. But I tried not to do that. I didn't want to embarrass my mom. I didn't want to embarrass my family. So I really didn't do that. And when other guys did it, it really kind of bothered me because it's not right. It's not the right thing to do, I don't believe.
But it was such a, I mean, it must have been such a staggering thing for people to recognize, because even when you were enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, this is what people spoke about at your ceremony. They said about your demeanor. So how did that translate to the field and to your play? Do you think it's something you got to be true to who you are and who your personality is? Maybe Sauce, it jazzes him up, it gets him ready to go, but what's your perspective on things like that?
Well, for me, it's like I also had a bad experience. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a situation where I was feeling arrogant and cocky and everything. And I might have said something in the press one day, and that guy, I said, he's not going to catch a pass, that kind of a thing. And he ended up catching a pass, and it was a big pass, an important pass. And so I said, I'm not ever going to say that again. I'm not going to ever put myself in a situation where I'm going to make myself look bad, and all that guy has to do is catch it.
I got you.
One catch. So that was one thing, and it really wasn't my nature. I played a lot of different positions. In high school, I was a tight end when I started. I was a wide receiver. I was a quarterback. I never played wide receiver. I played, in the preseason a little bit, but then they moved me to quarterback because we needed quarterback.
Right.
And so that helped me in college. I had an appreciation for the quarterbacks. I knew exactly how difficult that job was. Only thing I didn't like was they gave all the credit to the quarterback.
Right.
I hated that, and I even told the coaches that. I said, why do the quarterbacks get all the credit? When you mention the defense, why don't the guys who really did a good job, why don't they get some credit?
Right.
And they don't broadcast the game. They just coach us, and it's up to those broadcasters.
It's kind of like the trenches, and a lot of those linemen, they don't get that credit they deserve. As we're breaking down the X's and O's from this Super Bowl game, to me what's fascinating is, the way Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed contained Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. They did not have big games. Even George Kittle did not have big receiving games. What did you see from the X's and O's standpoint on how they really contained?
I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you because when it comes to watching the games, I'm a fan just like you. I'm watching the ball, wherever the ball is.
Gotcha.
Only times I sometimes we'll watch is when I'm expecting. I know they're going to throw the ball to this guy. I'm wondering how they're going to do it, those kind of things. But I really don't get involved in that anymore.
Okay, I love it. Listen, the great Mike Haynes, this guy, not only we're going to have you're going to have to come back to the studio and talk to us because so many amazing things you actually really did throughout your career. You even, as you were transitioning from the Patriots to the Raiders, you actually had to take the NFL to court just to be able to kind of play for the Raiders, and they had to void a whole contract. So that set an interesting precedent. But real quickly, before I let you go, just want to know that game, 38-9, you guys beat the Washington Redskins, Super Bowl 18, 1984. You had Marcus Allen was the MVP. He had a huge game on the ground. Cliff Branch, Ted Hendricks, Howie Long, so many great players. On the other side, John Riggins, Art Monk. What is the jitters like? Tell us. Not many people can understand what it's like to play in a Super Bowl game. You guys went up 21-3 at halftime, so it really was a blowout. But do you remember what those feelings were like? Is it truly just like any other football game, or does Super Bowl Sunday feel completely different?
Well, for me, it felt completely different. I can only speak for myself. And earlier that season, the Raiders and the Redskins played against each other. And the Redskins beat them.
And the Redskins were defending Super Bowl champions.
Right, and they were defending champions. So their ego was huge. They really thought, wow, we're going to really win this game. We've already played these guys. We know what kind of guys they are. However, the only thing that was really different was me. When they played earlier in the year,
didn't have you.
I wasn't a Raider yet. I was still holding out.
Games, yeah,
I was still holding out. And so that was probably the best thing that ever happened because when I got a chance to study film with Lester, he would tell me why they did that. And I know Ted Watts, who was the other corner, who was just a young guy, super talented guy, but he's young, has a lot to learn. And over the course of the season, he would learn. Over the course of his career, he's going to learn. But this was a little early in his career, and they kind of picked on him. And so he had good coverage, but a completion is a completion, And so they put me in front, and we started to win. And he would take their third guy, their other wide receiver.
Gotcha.
And that made us a super strong defensive team. And we all looked at film together, and we all shared notes. We all compared our thoughts and stuff like that. And I'd get their feelings on how they felt about the quarterback and all this. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. But because of what they said leading up to the game, I had my game face on for 2 days before that game.
Just the intensity.
Yeah, it was going to be intense because I knew that it was going to be very difficult to stop them. They felt like they beat us. They felt like they were better than us. What's it going to take for them to back down? And that's what it took. It took us playing super tough football, gang tackling, making good hits, and breaking up balls and stuff like that. And just, in the huddle, they should put a camera and a mic in the huddle to hear what guys are saying in the huddle. But our huddle breaks were huge, and we walked out. If you looked at everybody's face after every huddle break, they had their game face on like this is the most important play.
You guys were taking it seriously.
Not the game. This is the most important play. When they go in that play, we play it well, get back in the huddle, same thing. Another play, we got to stop them. And so even when we were up, generally when you're up, you kind of like relax a little bit. You go, oh, they got to score 2 touchdowns to catch up with us. Not that game. We played every single play, every single quarter, all out.
And last question for you. What does it feel like when you pick off Joe Theismann in a Super Bowl game, you get that interception?
Well, just a Super Bowl interception is the most important thing. At least you want that just because, you're playing and you want to have a great career. You want to talk about the great things that you did. And if I just say, I covered Mike Davis all day. He was good.
Not an easy task. I'm a lot quicker than I look.
But having that interception, is something that I didn't get a lot of times because people didn't like to try and throw on my side because I was like a receiver. I'd catch the ball just as easily as a receiver. And that made a huge difference for me. And I was honored that Joe Theismann tried to throw on me.
I love it. Listen, a stud and a gentleman on and off the field. Pro Football Hall of Famer, College Football Hall of Famer. He's part of the NFL 100 anniversary team, 75-year anniversary team, and he's a Super Bowl champion with the Raiders, the great Mike Haynes. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.